It is my pleasure to be here today, particularly in this venue. 15 years ago, my wife and I were married, and we chose to spend our honeymoon in New Zealand. And so for 2.5 weeks, we spent time in the South Island, visiting Doubtful Sound, Milford Sound, trekking around down there. We went to Mount Cook. And hiked on the glaciers there, and I just remember how wonderful, how beautiful this country is, and how friendly everybody was. We had a situation on the way back from Mount Cook where we were so excited about everything that we'd seen, and we thought everything was so beautiful that we completely forgot to fill the car up with gas. And so as we're driving back, my wife was driving, and she's like, "Something's wrong with the car," and I was looking over at her. And I was like, "What's wrong?" And she's like, "I don't know, it's not going anymore." Actually, maybe, am I looking in the right direction? I don't know which side we sit on here. Anyways, so needless to say, we ran out of gas. We're in the middle of nowhere. It's Sunday night at like 7 o'clock in October. And, of course, everything is shut down in the South Island by this time. So we were sure, this was the last day that we were in New Zealand, we were sure we were not going to make it back. So we got out of the car, we started walking, and a gentleman in a pickup truck saw us, offered some help. Turns out he owns a gas station, pretty convenient for us. So took us back to the gas station, we got some gas, got the car, and got back to our hotel on time. So, but it was just an example of everything that we experienced in this country. So I'm really excited to be back here. So today I want to talk about a subject which is near and dear to my heart, and that is, if I can get my little clicker here going, the role of data. As was discussed this morning by Frank, this is one of the most transformative things that's affecting our industry right now. And it's something which I think represents a pretty unique opportunity for CIOs in particular. And what I thought I'd do is I'd start off with a little bit of historical context, with something that may not sound like it has much relevance here. But if you'll forgive me the second, I'll make the connection. And that's with regards to currency. I'm a student of macroeconomics. It was my favorite subject when I was in business school, and so I have to find some way to weave it into my presentations. And I was really excited to be able to do that here. If you start going back to the beginning of recorded human history in terms of how we would transact with each other, the first exchange systems are basically barter. I have a cow, you have grain, I'll give you some milk, you give me some bread. I might need clothes, you may be, but I know how to make tools, so let's trade goods and services. And the problem with barter is that it requires there to be a coincidence of wants. You both need to have a need for the same thing, or a need for what each other has to offer at the same time. So it doesn't work very well when you scale. And that's why societies eventually moved to some type of coin-based currency. And precious metals were particularly desirable at the time. They're easy to carry around. So the first currency was coinage. And that evolved over the centuries. And eventually, it was the Chinese that were the first to think of depository notes or paper money. And what paper money solved is now you didn't have to carry around all this heavy coinage with you. You could use something that was far more easy to stick in your pocket. And we've effectively stuck with that mode of currency up until about 1973, when the United States exited the Bretton Woods Agreement. And when that happened, all of a sudden, most of the currencies in the world moved off of the gold standard and became purely fiat currencies. And really what that meant is that the currencies became ideas. It was just the concept of money, but they didn't actually mean anything. And as that evolved, particularly in the information age, currency ceased to really exist. In today's world, if a central bank wants to create additional money, they don't actually go through the process of printing it anymore. It's a transaction in a system. In fact, all of the major stock markets today are all electronic as well. And effectively what this means is that money doesn't really exist anymore. Money is just information. But what's exciting is that the reverse is also true. Information is money. It is the currency of the future. And we see this if we look at the value of information-based companies versus traditional manufacturing or traditional-based industries like manufacturing. That there's been a tremendous growth, and that will continue as things move on into the future. And what this means for us as CIOs is an incredible opportunity. One, to really change our focus from this, the last 10 years of a relentless drive for cost efficiencies towards really creating value for our businesses. But let's understand this trend a little bit more in terms of what's causing it. One of the things that has affected us dramatically over the last 10 years is the change in the cost of compute. There has just been a dramatic fall off in the cost of storing and processing information. Now, a lot of this is from things like that have been present in our industry for a long time, like Moore's Law. But even on the storage front, storage costs continue to fall 40 to 50% every single year. In 1980, a gigabyte of storage would have put you back $193,000, US that is. And in today's world, it'll cost you about 14 cents. This dramatic increase or reduction in the cost of technology has enabled a lot of amazing innovations. The smartphones that we carry around in our pockets are over 100,000 times more powerful than the computers that put the man on the moon. And with the ubiquity of cloud computing and the connectivity to cloud services, it enables us to be completely surrounded by information. So while the cost of information, or the cost of storing and managing information, has fallen dramatically, this hasn't led to the complete abolishment of IT organizations, or even that our budgets have continued to shrink at the rate of depreciation of the cost of technology. Excuse me. Rather, quite the opposite. What's happening is that there's an inverse relationship between the cost of storing and managing information and our ability to produce it. So as the costs fall, we are producing more and more and more. And that is continuing to rise at a geometric pace. And we see this all over the place, where the number of emails that are sent every second surpasses over 3.5 million. Every second, there's over 20 hours of video that's uploaded onto YouTube. Google processes 24 petabytes of information in the delivery of their services. Facebook, we have over 700 billion minutes of utilization of the technology and growing every single month. So there's just tremendous amounts of data that is being generated in the world today. In fact, there are more pieces of data online today than there are grains of sand on all the beaches in the world put together. Throughout history, all human progress has been based on expanding access to data. And just as with each new generation of technology, the variety and the quality of data that is available to us grows, it changes how we perceive and view the world. In the past, we would stare at the stars and we'd look for new truths in the universe. Today, we can peer into these immense data sets, and we can discover amazing new insights about everything from healthcare, medicine, human society, and the natural world. A year ago, a little bit over a year ago now, the Arab Spring provided a dramatic example of what happens to societies when they have freer access to information. Several months after the Arab Spring, there was actually an amazing study conducted at the University of Tennessee where they took over 100 million news articles and they loaded them into a supercomputer there. And what they found is that they could use this to predict major world events. Using a technology called mood analysis, they were able to demonstrate a sharp drop in public sentiment well before both the Egyptian and Libyan revolutions. So what this really means is that we're potentially on the verge of being able to, for the first time, to predict and forecast human interaction. And this is why technology is such a meaningful place for all of us to be right now. Technology is no longer about just the hardware and the software. It's about what we can do with it. For us as technology leaders, data is a new frontier. It changes the relationships that we will have with the businesses that we work for. Just as over the last 10 years, IT has become more and more commoditized, our emphasis during that period was to really drive operational efficiency, to make our budgets lean and mean. That's not been a particularly valuable place to be in our corporations. It's been necessary, but that's not how we build up a strategic partnership with our CEOs. But data provides a new opportunity for us to return to the days that we had in the mid-90s, when innovative use of technology could create significant differentiators for business. The difference is today, we're already sitting on what we have. We already have access to all this data underneath us. It's a matter of untapping it and unlocking its potential. In addition, that data is specific to each of our companies. So the context in which we operate is unique to the businesses that we work for. I want to talk a little bit about how we make use of data at Facebook. And through this, I will introduce a model which hopefully you can take away and make use of. But let me start with a few statistics about the company and just to give you an idea of the amount of data that we have to deal with. It's pretty well known that there's over 900 million monthly active users on Facebook and growing. And over 500 million people access the site on a daily basis. It's also true that over 500 million people access the site on mobile devices. And every day, this user base generates tremendous amounts of activity on the site. Over 125 million new friendships are created. Over 3.2 billion likes and comments. And over 300 million photos are uploaded every day. And behind this, there's just a massive infrastructure to be able to support all of this information and to capture data about what our users are doing. There's over 10 billion web hits that hit our infrastructure each day. Over 108 billion queries on our database infrastructure. But where it gets really interesting is when we start talking about how we analyze things. Each day, we load over 10 terabytes of data into our Hadoop infrastructure. That's the equivalent of over 1 million phone books. Data analysts within the company can execute queries to go through our Hadoop ecosystem and access over 105 terabytes of data in a single query. That's 5 times the texts that are in the Library of Congress in the United States. It's a tremendous amount of information that is available to people at their fingertips. So while we operate in an environment of immense scale, we in effect have a responsibility to our company to innovate in this type of ecosystem. And how do we do that? So let me introduce a framework to just think about data and talk about the relationship between data and people. The core idea here is that the types of information that we have vary, and the types of resources that one needs to manage that information pertain to the type of information that you're producing within your company. For the purpose of this model, I'll leverage an example that I think all of us know and love, which is our help desk, our IT support systems. But data starts with facts. Things happen. My computer breaks. It's a fact. sometimes debatable with certain users, but it's a fact that the computer is broken. It doesn't become data until it is captured by a system. It gets captured in the form of a ticket, or maybe for a smaller organization, it's just an email, or a next generation organization, as was suggested this morning, a social networking system. But once it gets into a system, it now becomes data, and now we can do stuff with it. If it doesn't get in there, it doesn't exist from a data perspective. Data that is then aggregated is information. And information is hugely valuable. We can start asking a whole bunch of questions. How many laptops are breaking? Whose laptops are breaking? We can look at other types of aggregates. What's the performance on fixing these issues? How many times do we exceed our defined service level agreements on addressing this? All that is information that we're able to glean. But where things start to get really interesting is when you start generating insights. Insights for us are where we correlate data across multiple dimensions. Facebook is a growing company. We're constantly adding more people. The load on our help desk is predominantly driven by new users. They don't know how to set up the printers. They don't know, where the certain wiki is that they're looking for. So there's a lot of informational requests that are in there. So one of the insights that we've built based on that is that there's a direct correlation between the tenure of the user and the amount of support that they drive. And we can chart that over time. And in fact, it becomes a key performance indicator. How do we maintain that ratio, and how do we reduce the ratio between how many tickets are generated by new hires versus tickets that are generated by tenured employees? So insights can be hugely valuable. And then once you have that, you can then use insights to build predictive models. So for example, we have a rough idea of how much we want the company to grow over the next couple of years. We know how many interns and new hires we're going to have next summer. And so based on that, we can pretty accurately predict what our help desk workload is going to be based on the insights that we know today. In terms of how we manage this, the analogy I like to use is that of a tree. And if you think about it, a tree needs to be fed and nurtured in order to grow. It has to have a very extensive root system. The root system for us is data instrumentation. It's where the data comes from. It's how we pull it off of the production environment, or the way that we pull it out of our internal information systems. That data then goes someplace. It goes on some type of data infrastructure, databases, Hadoop ecosystems. That's another element of it. Now, for a tree to be strong and valuable, you need to have a strong trunk. The trunk for us is the centralized data warehouse and the data definitions that go along with it. If you have 50 bazillion organizations in the company defining the same metric, who a user is, who a customer is, what revenue is, then people will constantly spend all their time disagreeing about the data as opposed to analyzing the data and making use of it. So for us, it has to be centralized in a small number of groups that work very closely together so we have common definitions, and there can't be overlap between these things. The real value then happens in the leaves of the tree, where the data analysts work, where the data visualization experts work, where the data scientists work. And in fact, the layers of the tree effectively map out to the layers of the data model that I outlined earlier, and they also highlight the different skills that you're going to need. In today's world, we all pretty much have the data analysts and many of us probably already have ETL developers. It is the role of the data scientists and the technology and engineering organizations that are perhaps new to some of our organizations. But these are the skills that every organization that's going to be data-oriented is going to need. Now, let me go through a couple examples of how we work together to solve problems. So while Facebook is well known for the number of people that use the product, we care about providing value to our customers. particularly to our users. We want them to have an experience where they get value out of the product. I mean, so if they're engaged with it, then they're getting value out of it. But what exactly is engagement? It's a data question. How do you measure it? Is it the amount of time spent? Is it the number of clicks? Is it some other more sophisticated calculation? And we found, after analyzing our data for a while, that one of the most predictive measures of whether someone is going to be and stay engaged in terms of activity on the site is how much they return. And it kind of makes sense, right? So if they come in today, Facebook is a fairly sticky product, and once you get into it, it's kind of hard to stop. But once you leave it, and are you going to come back the next day? Is the product engaging enough? And so we use a metric we call L6 of 7, which basically looks at how many of our users log in 6 out of 7 days. And it's a particularly insightful measure. We can chart it over time. But then the next question was, okay, so what? We have this measure. What do we do with it? What drives engagement? More questions that we need to ask, more data that we need to analyze. Is engagement driven by good content? Is it driven by features like polls or other functionality? Is it driven by beautiful user experience, lots of imagery? The answer to all those questions is yes. Well, one of the things that we found that is the most correlated to engagement is the number of friends you have. Now, this may not sound so shocking. Facebook by itself doesn't really do anything if you don't have any friends. But it's the relationship between those two and the scale of that, how that evolves, which provided insight for us. And understanding this then drove product strategy. One of the core parts of the product is a thing we call PYMK, or people you may know. And you see this when you log into Facebook. This is an empty Facebook page. When you log in, you have nothing. What do you see? And effectively what you get, the product doesn't do anything until you have some friends. So the initial focus is to build up a friend base for you. And that's, in the past, been pretty easy. We'll take contact lists off of your email and other things in order to help identify friends, and we can do matching to find them on Facebook if they're already there. But where it gets more interesting is when we start asking you for a little bit more information to share about yourself. Where did you go to high school? Where did you go to college? Where do you work? When did you graduate? How old are you? All these little bits of information we can then use to model a more accurate profile of yourself. And then using a set of heuristics that we've developed over the years, we can start identifying people within our data set that you probably have some type of relationship with. And this is something that gets better over time. The more we know about you and the more friends you have, the more we can start predicting other people that you might know. And in fact, it doesn't really end for us. It's not just about getting the first users of the product engaged and using it. It's about keeping people engaged. So even users on the site who have many, many friends, we don't stop encouraging them to build up new friendships because we found that correlation holds to a very high number. And the results of this are tremendous. Our engagement, as measured by something that's a little bit easier to compare to other companies, and the total amount of time spent on Facebook continues to grow on a per-user basis. It now approaches almost 7 hours a month. And when you contrast that to a competitive social network, it doesn't even register on the scale. Obviously, these are the results of a relentless focus on this key performance indicator. But more importantly, it's the use of data that has enabled us to be so successful with it. But data for us is not just about the end consumer. It's also about our businesses, the businesses that use the product. The core mechanism for businesses to engage on Facebook is their Facebook page. The Facebook page is where they define who they are, their brand. It's how they amass fans. It's how they communicate with their customers. In our new advertising model, the Facebook page is the beginning of how they will advertise through things like sponsored stories. So a lot of companies have placed emphasis on growing out who their Facebook fans are. And that's been an important part of their experience on Facebook. And companies like Coca-Cola, have well into the 40 million fans. Other brands like Nike, global brands, have 10 million fans. Companies have been very successful in amassing their fans. But as they get more and more customers in there, the little bits of data that we provide them today are insufficient for them to really understand who their fans are. So my team earlier this year, we engaged with our sales organization to see how can we help them be more effective partners to our customers. And what they told us is that they need to know more so that they can work with our customers to make better use of the relationships that they have with Facebook. Our customers want to understand who their fans are, and they want to understand if they're engaging with them properly. So we put together a team that was focused really on three things. One, we obviously had all this data, but the people that wanted to make use of it were less sophisticated users. They were not data scientists. These are more data-oriented sales representatives and working with the data organizations of our customers. So we needed something that was easy to use, which in part meant that it had to have really good visualizations. We needed to have something that would provide insight, so provide not just access to aggregate information, but the ability to see correlations. And we wanted something that was going to provide rich drill-down capability, and of course had to perform well and all that kind of stuff. So we built something that ended up looking like this, and the data that I'm showing for you today is it's fictitious data, but this is for, say, a luxury automobile company. And as they log in and they look at their data, through the visualization, they're able to see something that shows some interesting opportunities right away. This is a global manufacturer of luxury automobiles, but their highest fan count is in countries that aren't particularly affluent. Countries like India and a few places in the Middle East. So it's an aspirational brand, and that's okay. That's actually a good thing. But it means that if they're just looking at that aggregate bit of information, that 10.2 million fans that they have, it's not enough. So let's drill down a little bit and look at what their fan base is in the United States. Oh, okay, they have 760,000 fans. Well, that may not be enough for them. There are certainly a lot more consumers and consumers on Facebook in the United States that are interested in luxury automobiles than 760,000. So how might they get more? Maybe they need more connections in order to better get across their message and to also make better use of the platform. This is where insights come in. So Facebook advertising is based on a rich set of targeting capabilities. One of the targeting options that we provide is we build psychographic profiles of our users. Those psychographic profiles are based on their interests, around other pages that they like. It's essentially another data product that we produce. So the tool that we built provides affinity calculations and fan overlap calculations for this fan base. This enables our customers to get a better understanding of what psychographic profiles score highly with their brand and how much of them do they actually have. And it helps them to then identify what additional fan acquisition campaigns should they put in place. What are the things that they can use to help them acquire more of the right fans for them? The insights that we built could be used on other dimensions as well. Let's just say this automobile manufacturer is interested in co-marketing opportunities. And they have a number of, they're focused more on women than men. So starting with men, if they look at the detail of their fan pages, they see that, okay, men like what they would expect men to like. They like things like Coca-Cola and other cars, and this is kind of interesting. The darkest box here, which represents affinity, is the United States Marine Corps. So of fans of the United States that are men of this brand, the thing that they have the highest affinity for is the military. This is a very macho fan base that we have here. And that's okay, but our focus is on women. Now, women only represent here 25% of their fan population. So that's certainly something for them to focus on. But we're also looking at co-marketing opportunities. We want to understand what these women like. And as we look here, we can see the striking difference between women and men. We can see women are less interested in soft drinks and more interested in coffee. We can see that women are less interested in other cars and more interested in shopping. And the highest affinity box here is another luxury apparel manufacturer. So maybe that's the co-marketing opportunity. Maybe there's something we can do with that company that would be mutually beneficial for us. So it's a great example of how data can create value for companies. And this tool has been incredibly well received by our customers and has been something that has really helped them to get more value out of their investment and time with Facebook. But the opportunities with data are not limited to just things that we've done. There's many other examples of how companies have turned data assets into products. Last year, McKinsey calculated that big data could increase a retailer's operating margins by more than 60%. If we look at Amazon, one of the largest online retailers, at least in the United States, they have made very interesting use of data. One of their data products, which is very subtle and extremely powerful, is their recommendation engine. Their recommendation engine is based on all this information that they've gleaned from their customers over time about what things that they have bought and their stated preferences. And then they can use that to build predictive models based on what other people with the same preferences have also bought. Now, in the online retailing space, typically the amount of unplanned revenue or unplanned expenditures that consumers make only accounts for roughly about 25% of the revenue that these retailers take in. And that's pretty low compared to other brick and mortar shops. But with this, Amazon was able to generate over a third more revenue from unplanned expenditures, achieving close to 35% of their total revenue. All this from a data product. Walmart's another example of a very innovative company when it comes to data. And they've been well known for years in terms of how they do things on the back end with their supply chain management. But they're also innovating on the front end. They recently rolled out a Facebook application called ShoppyCat. ShoppyCat is a gift recommendation engine that reaches into both the gifts and the things that Walmart has to sell, as well as other websites. But what it does is it also connects to the consumer's Facebook profile to pull the interests and likes of their friends. And using this information, it will make recommendations to the consumer of different things that they might want to buy for their friends that are going to be much more likely to be interested in. And it's a pretty innovative use of technology. I mean, gift giving is one of the most social activities that we engage in as people. And tapping into the power of all the data that's available via social media and combining it with the information that they have is just a very natural fit. And it's just another example of technology, using technology and data to serve the needs of people. But there are a number of challenges ahead with data. Managing the privacy expectations is essential to ensuring that the data tools that we provide are safe, secure, and effective. It's also important to achieve broad public support for these tools. It's a fundamental public policy issue today that any technology organization that engages in this type of data management faces. And it's incumbent on us to educate policymakers. There is a natural fear of change. Whenever any new technology comes to market that affects the individual, there is a natural reluctance to adoption, and that can really impede the value of these solutions and technologies. We also need, it is essential that we, as technology companies, build in the safeguards to make this type of information meet the expectations that our consumers and the societies in which we operate in expect of us. Harnessing data is also not just about technology. It's very much about people. The number one asset that Facebook has in terms of its data services is not any of its technology. In fact, much of its technology we give away for free. It is the people that we have. To be effective in building a robust set of value-added data services, IT leaders need to take the responsibility and leadership in helping to make sure that we have the right workforces to support these types of ecosystems. You have to help create a culture that makes use of, relies on, that values data-based arguments for decision-making. And for a lot of companies, this can be a pretty significant transition that is both difficult and painful. It also needs to be reflective in the way that we develop our talent. We have to train people on how to make use of this information. The tool that I showed earlier for Page Insights, one of the reasons that we didn't just stick it out in the marketplace is because it requires education on how to make use of it. And this is essential internally. It's not just good enough to just provide the data to put it out there. You need to teach an organization that's never had this information before how to make use of it effectively. Finally, it's important to have the right mission. If you want to harness a new currency, you need to spend it on something smart. And that's why entering into the age of this data-driven age that we all face, we have to, it's become more important than ever that we retain the values of the companies that we work for and the principles that those values empower. Business without data is blind, but data without human values is effectively dumb. So in conclusion, there is a tremendous opportunity that we all face today. We're all sitting on mountains of valuable information that we can make use of, both to drive value within our companies and to create value for our customers. Imagine the social good that we can all do collectively by using this information for good, to create better products, to create better workspaces for our employees, to create better experiences for our customers, to create a better society overall. But there's also a long way to go, and there's a lot for us to learn, to collaborate and share on with each other. But if we can harness this data for a clever, differentiated, innovative mission, I believe that this can dramatically change the role of IT organizations for the companies that we work for.